Dant Crossing, Gethsemane, Kentucky. Timeless hospitality that stirs the spirit. Dant Crossing is a one-of-a-kind destination for unforgettable weddings, memorable corporate events, day trips, and weekend getaways. The pastoral campus is anchored by Watershed Distillery and includes an amphitheater that seats 2,000, a 12-acre lake for fishing and unique lodging options, creating an immersive experience that's rooted in the community and culture of our little slice of Kentucky. More attractions will open soon at Dant Crossing, including our 21,000 square foot distillery, which we will have the ability to produce 15,000 barrels of spirit each year, a network of wooded walking trails, fully functional private train depot, farm-to-table restaurant, and the Legacy, a premier wedding and events venue. Whether you're looking to host an event, book a stay, or reserve a tasting, we're ready to welcome you. Learn more at dantcrossing.com.
Spirits of French Lick is proud to introduce the Maddie Gladden Bottled and Bond Bourbon. This 4-year aged bourbon is double pot distilled and non-chill filtered and has a full-bodied mouthfeel with eucalyptus, molasses, clove, ginger, and slight citrus as well as grains of paradise. The finish is long and reappearing on the back of the tongue with notes of pepper, tobacco leaf, and mint green. All of our spirits are available for tasting and purchase inside the French Lick Winery and Distillery. Spirits of French Lick. Respect the grain, please enjoy responsibly, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
Welcome back, everybody, to Tiny's under 10-minute tasting of Baker's 107 Single Barrel. Tonight, we are going to be tasting this expression from Jim Beam. It's part of their 4 series small batch bourbons. They have Baker's, they have Basil Hayden's, they have Booker's, and they also have Knob Creek. But tonight we are tasting the 107. A little bit of history on the Baker's 107. Baker Beam, who basically has been at the distillery, was at the distillery his whole life, is now retired. But this, when Booker was coming up with the small batch, initially, the Baker's that he came out, it was called the Baker's 7, I believe. And that Baker's was a blend. But they've updated it recently. It's 107. The Baker's 7 is 107. It's a single barrel now. So they're producing single barrels. And one of the cool things about it is the single barrels are at least 7 years old, but this single barrel is 8 years and 8 months. So it was barreled on February of 2012 and then put in the bottle in late 2020. So one of the cool things that would have been, let's see, it's 8 months, so October of 2020. So one of the cool things is when you're purchasing this, the age statement is right on it. So when I was down at, I believe I was down at the Party Source in Kentucky, right across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. And this Baker's was one on there. The rest, some were 6 years, some were 7, but this one was an 8-year, 8-month. So I was super excited. Now, Baker's 7, the small batch was my wife's favorite bourbon. And it's also kind of special because when I first started tasting bourbons, this was the next level. First, there was E.H. Taylor and Basil Hayden. We were drinking, and plus Evan Williams and Jim Beam and whatnot. And then we started in Colonel Taylor. But then when we went to Baker's, one of the cool things about Baker's that I loved about it is that it was the first bourbon that I was able to start understanding the different levels of my palate. I hadn't really gotten into drinking whiskey. I knew that there was a lot of flavors and I had been reading about the flavors, but I didn't understand the front end of the sweetness on your tongue, the middle of your tongue, and then the back of your tongue leading into the back of your throat. And Baker's was the first bourbon to do or spell out the different levels of what was happening in my mouth. It starts off a little bit sweet and spicy, but it then turns into a little bit of that nutty, caramely taste, and then it smooths out and goes right down your throat with a nice hug, but it's a little bit oily and slickery. So that was one of the cool things about Baker's that I absolutely loved. It's made by Jim Beam. Now, Baker initially grew up on the current Jim Beam Claremont property in the Jeray Beam house. Now, Jeray was Jim Beam's son that they built the house for. And after he lived there, Shucks Beam and his family moved in there, which Baker and David grew up in this house. Baker, after he got divorced, came back to the property. He's always was working there, and he always looked at himself as a working man and wasn't a spokesperson. He wasn't per se into all the promoting and everything. He worked there and did his thing, but he had a bottle named after him. And when he first started understanding his role in the Beam family, it was sometime in the 1970s. There was a group of people from Louisville that came down to see the distillery, and one of them asked him to sign a bottle. And when he was asked to sign a bottle, he kind of understood where his place is. And then to have this Baker's named after him, he was very proud of that. But he lived on the property for a long time. It's still there. There's lots of, the house is still there. It's their offices. I was there this last fall leading into early winter, and it was right next to his property is right next to the kitchen, the new restaurant they put on called the Kitchen Table. The property has so much room for expansion, and they keep expanding. New distillery, a craft distillery, and plus they have the main distillery there. Wonderful place. If you get a chance, go down there and do it. So let's go. The rating system here on Tiny's under 10-minute tastings is as followed: 25 for nose, 25 possible for taste, 25 for body, and 25 for finish. That's what we're going to rate, and I am tasting in the nice Jim Beam Glencairn. We also have the Scotchy Bourbon Boy Glencairns, which are for sale on our website, www.scotchybourbonboys.com. Check that out. Also, the Scotchy Bourbon Boys podcast regularly on all podcast formats. And also, we are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and also Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. And then the last but not least, check us out on Patreon. Lots of cool things to support us and ways to support us. But I'm Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, and I'm going to start this tasting of Baker's 7 single barrel. Here we go, pouring into my Glencairn. Glencairns are awesome for tasting. One of the nice things is their bases are so that you don't have to warm up the bourbon with your fingers. You can hold it at the base. Another cool aspect of it is you can swirl it around, look at it, and you also, I don't know if I didn't over pour, but if you roll it, it rolls on the ground also, and that's another way to get it to go on the glass, you check out the sides and the legs, and it clings. This one, Baker seems to be clinging. Oh, and then it's long legs from top to bottom, and they're pretty thick. So as it drips down, those are called legs. As they drip back down. Now, I have my whiskey tasting journal right here. Baker's 107, single barrel, Kentucky straight bourbon. This one's 8 years, 8 months, $69.99 is what I paid. And today is 120. Now, first thing you want to rate is color. Looking at this color, it's a little bit, I would say this is just caramel. That's what I say at 8 years, it's caramel. It's not super dark, and it's not mahogany. It's just the color of a caramel. Now, nosing, this is a tulip-shaped glass. One of the cool things is there's a couple ways. First, I like to nose normally, just put it my nose over the top. I get that Jim Beam nutty smell and a little bit of caramel. I'm looking for it, but I get a little bit of rye. Now, that's what I get when I put my nose over the top. Now, if you listen over not listen, but if you smell over the top, you can usually pick out some more. Now I'm getting some baking spices in there. Yeah, right on the top, I pick out baking spices that I don't pick out on the nose when I'm at the front. So you always can get a little bit more. Now, the other thing is once you drink this and it sits for a while, the nose opens up also. So we'll do a little tasting. Now, I've got tasting notes from Breaking Bourbon, plus I'll give you the lowdown on the hoedown. We already said the proof's 107. They have an 8 year, 6 months. I have an 8 year, 8 months. 7 years minimum, but the mash bill on this is 77 corn, 13 rye, and 10 malted barley. For the nose. And the flavor. All right, so what I'm getting right now is I get a little bit of corn, I get a little bit of caramel, I get a little bit of the nuttiness, but I'm getting a ton of vanilla. So I get that classic Jim Beam. Got a little menthol there. I like that way in the back of my throat. I picked up like a menthol. Really kind of interesting. And then there's a little bit of oak. So that's what I'm getting on the taste. Not a huge hug. It's 107. Now, as far as the Kentucky Chew, which when you roll it around your mouth, once again, I find mid-palate, this bourbon is so silky smooth that it just rolls in your mid-palate. The flavor is on your tongue, back of your throat, whatever, but that mid-palate is just like, it tries to be like a Johnny Walker Blue, where it's disguising itself. It doesn't start off that way. It's got the nice flavors, the caramels and vanillas on the front. There's a little bit of a vanilla finish. There's some menthol back there. I like that. I've always liked this bourbon because of the multi-level experience that it has and leaves you with. Like right now, the finish isn't all in. It's missing in the middle of my tongue, but on the back of my throat, I'm getting some really nice flavors and a really nice, it's minty. There's some vanilla right there. A ton of vanilla. So it's really kind of cool with this. This is a multi-level experienced bourbon. So that's one of the nice things why I think this bourbon's worth the money that you pay. All right, so we're going to rate it. So let's hit it again. Let's go back to the nose. I kind of know what I was thinking the nose would be. I'm going to pop the cork on this. This really has a nice topper. You can see, and then it is not original cork. It's fake cork. So let's hit this one more time. It's so Jim Beam forward. There's no doubt. All right. The nose that they pick up here on Breaking Bourbon, this bourbon is into a bean product. Nutty aroma jumps out, which is really potent and initially blocks out other scents, giving a deep inhale. However, brings out baking spices along with hints, caramel, and vanilla. It would be nice if the nuttiness was not so dominating. However, it still presents a fine way to open this sip. The palate, a plethora of flavors opens up the palate with a slightly burnt caramel. Let me see. There's slightly burnt caramel, a ton of vanilla on the roof of my mouth. But once again, mid-tongue is really what I've always remembered about what Baker's is. It's oil, a little extra oily. So then it says, vanilla quickly dispenses, leaving a warming dry oak and nut flavor that dances around each other. The others are popped by a base of heat that reminds you of the 107 proof the bourbon is bottled at. Overall, the medium length finish is a nice way to end this sip. So I'm not getting as much of the menthol. There's a little there. I'm getting a much more rich pecan instead of the menthol. So, all right, the nose. On this nose, going back at it, I would have to agree. The nuttiness is overpowering. You could pull out the baking spices and a little bit of vanilla, but overall, the nose, I have to give an 18 to the nose. Now, the taste is such a multi-level taste, but I love the taste of this. And you're dealing with baking spices, you're dealing with vanilla, caramel, mint, oak, very complex on the palate. I'm going to give this is the strong point of this particular bourbon. I give the palate of Baker's a 23. And then I give the finish, the body. Now, this isn't a big bodied bourbon. So at 107, there's a lot of big bodied bourbon, but this misses your cheeks completely, even when you do a full. Most of the flavor, tip of the tongue, back of the throat, but it's missing. Now, in the glass, I would say that this is a pretty, if you look at this, the way the legs worked and everything, it's a 24. But when it comes to the taste and what I feel the body is, it has to be a full body is how much it affects your whole mouth. And when something's a big body, it does your cheeks, under your tongue, top of your tongue, roof of your mouth, back of your throat. That's a big body. This is missing a little bit. So I'm going to put this finish at a 20. Not a finish, not the finish, the body. And then the finish is medium, I agree. It's nice. What I look for in a finish, pleasantries. Pleasantries of what's going on. What just happened there was pretty much the hug. The nice warming feeling is happening right there and kind of, overall trying to move around, come back, go down, come back. It's just the hug's really nice on this. So I would say the finish here is a 21. So I'm going to give Baker's 107. We'll add this up. That's 30, 41, 61, and 83. 83 out of 100. Now, 50 out of 100 is a good bourbon. Anything over 50 is a good bourbon. Anything over 75 gets into really good. And anything, when you get into 80, you're getting into a great bourbon. And when you get into the 90s, then you're getting into an elite bourbon. But I think that Baker's, with the price point of $69.99 and an 83 out of 100 is a damn good buy. Highly suggest, just remember, check out that age statement right there. It's right there for you. The longer a bourbon ages, a lot of times it picks up more. But with that said, this is Tiny's under 10-minute tasting. I'm Jeff Mueller, Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Remember, www.scotchybourbonboys.com. When you're there, if you see the Patreon button in the top right-hand corner, please click it, and support us. Plus, also, remember, we're on Facebook, our Facebook group. Check that out. Instagram, the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, Twitter, and also YouTube, which you're watching right now. Check us out, support us, but also check out our podcast, The Scotchy Bourbon Boys. And remember, whatever format you're looking, please subscribe and then also leave good feedback. So until the next Tiny's 10-minute tasting, I bid you farewell. Good bourbon equals good times and good friends, and get the hell out there and live dangerously.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
Good night, everybody.
The Watershed Story. A watershed moment might be pivotal, but it might also be quiet and fleeting. It could be a monumentous occasion, a cause for celebration, an enormous triumph, or a small daily victory. A watershed moment could be a rekindling or an observation or a gathering. Any opportunity to relish with friends and family. It's whatever you choose to cheers to, who you're gathered around, and whatever's worth celebrating. We founded Watershed Distillery on the principles of community in 2010. We wanted to live in, work in, and contribute to the community in which we grew up. We aimed to create spirits and stood apart in quality and character. Along the way, we set out to form a community of our own, one that could gather together to savor, celebrate, and enjoy good spirits and company. We've grown from a tiny little still and 2 guys in jumpsuits to a dedicated team of over 40 people and 2 much larger stills. If you're ever in the area, stop by so we can introduce you to our team and pour you some of our award-winning bourbon. Creating it was our watershed moment, but we want to hear about yours.